Do any of you order through Temu? I'm only asking because all right. So I I don't like to do online ordering, and it's because it's there's no like it's not a rational thing. It's just number one, I'm kind of averse to change. Number two, me and technology don't get along. Like I'm technology dumb. And number three, I have this irrational distrust of placing financial information online. And so I'm not very big on ordering from Amazon. I will never order from eBay again after I ordered something very recently to be sent to Saipan in the wake of the of Sinlaku, and it arrived 3 months later. And there was no real way of communicating with these people about the order. But I see all this stuff on Temu, and I want some stuff, like I want those big cat condos. You see those I don't know if your algorithm shows you that or shows you tools, but my algorithm shows me the big cat condos, and I want to get those because if you buy them here on Guam, a small one's going to cost you like $200 or something like that. And I'm looking at that and it says things like $19.99. I'm like, okay, I'll pay that in shipping, but I don't know. Like, what's your experience with Timu? Is it like am I going to be satisfied? Like, and do I have to spin that dumb wheel all the time in order to get the discounts? I don't know. That's not what I wanted to talk about today. We actually do have some pretty important subjects to talk about today. One of them is, and can I just tell you, so we're the ones who broke the story, which of an audit that has been on the books, published for 3 weeks. Earlier this week, we broke the story about that audit in the CNMI. It's the single audit for the CNMI government it's the audited financials of fiscal year 2023. Like it should have been the top story on the very first day that the Office of the Public Auditor published it in the CNMI 3 weeks ago, but it wasn't. And so we were the ones who published it. I am utterly amazed at the coverage that this has received because it is not factual coverage, and it is, I mean, just things that are extrapolated, not even based on what the audit actually says. So I've doubled down on this. I'm doubling down on the reporting on this FY23 audit. And what I did this morning was go through all of the audits under former Governor Ralph Torres from the time Governor Enos, the late Governor Enos, left the government in his last full fiscal year, which was fiscal year 2014, all the way to Ralph Torres's last full fiscal year in office, fiscal year 2022. And the numbers I'm going to show you directly from the audited financials are incredible. That's one subject. That's going to be the third part of our show. The second part of our show is a bizarre story, and I hope that Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio is okay. And because Father Matthew Blockley is a Catholic priest. He's incarnated in the CNMI. His last post at a church was as pastor of San Jose Parish in Oliai. He currently lives in the Philippines, though. Father Matthew, who does not do interviews, he's just a very soft-spoken man, very kind. He's a priest, right? He contacted us that he was accosted by the Lieutenant Governor of Guam in Manila. And first of all, the only reason that we knew that the Lieutenant Governor was in Manila is because JungleWatch published a photo that showed that he was in Manila with members of his family and also Archbishop Brian Jimenez. And it at least it answered the question that we were having with the governor's office as to where's the lieutenant governor. It still hasn't answered, like, what's the purpose of this trip? Was it publicly funded? If it's a personal trip, that's fine. It's just as long as it wasn't publicly funded or security guards are not being paid to go on a personal trip, right? Everyone needs a vacation. Like, no one's going to blame him for that, but it's just the transparency of it all, right? Well, anyway, so that photo was what the confrontation allegedly was about. And Father Matthew Blockley, he described to us what happened, and it's bizarre to state the least. It's disturbing. It's disturbing, and I want to talk about that a little bit. But I also want to talk about the public side of things, and that's the transparency of the administration in all of this. And also my curiosity as to what JungleWatch is trying to explain to us about that photo, that now infamous photo. But the first thing I want to talk to you about is all of this stuff surrounding Simon Sanchez High School, right? Like very recently, well, yesterday there was a surprise inspection by Public Health. I'll talk to you more about that. But there are all these hoops that these public officials and GDOE officials are jumping right now, and it has to do with solving these problems that keep cropping up. And these problems will keep cropping up so long as Simon Sanchez High School does not have a campus. And so, what's the holdup here? And it's DPW. DPW it's been almost a year since the one of the companies who made an offer to build Simon Sanchez High School lodged protests. And to this day, DPW has not answered those protests. That's where the delay is coming from. And it needs to be called out because we're now in a situation, according to an op-ed submitted by Simon Sanchez High School student, where the student bodies of both Teadston High School and Simon Sanchez High School are there's some resentment that's fostering, and it's neither of their fault, as this student points out. This is the government of Guam's fault, and it needs to be solved. So anyway, we'll start with that on the other side of the commercial break, and we'll talk about these three subjects throughout this show. Stick with us.
Good Morning Show with Troy Torres is brought to you by 76 Circle K Guam.
Welcome back to the show, and thank you so much for joining. If you're joining us by live stream on our simulcast on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, it's 9:02 a.m. on Thursday, August 13, 2026. First and foremost, today is the 25th anniversary of my grandma's entrance to eternal life. Secondly, I am very sorry that I started this show this late. I was a combination of lollygagging, doing research for a scene of my story that I'm going to talk to you about on the third part of this show. And also I was interviewed by Cousin Ray Gibson on his show at 93.3 FM, The Point. And he wanted to talk about the issue of, drugs on this island, and also this very bizarre story about a Catholic priest in Manila telling us that the Lieutenant Governor of Guam confronted him, accosted him inside a hotel, blaming him for a photo that nobody seems to understand why the Lieutenant Governor would be upset about the photo, but also his election loss. And so I have some things to say about that. But first, Senator Vince Borja, yesterday, following a walkthrough of the new temporary campus that is not a new facility that Simon Sanchez High School is utilizing as it awaits the government of Guam finally fulfilling its promise to build them a new school. It's Teadston. It's the buildings in between where Teadston High School currently operates and Guam Department of Education central office. And the reason that Vince Borja, who is the chairman of the education committee at the legislature, had to go and do this walkthrough is because of issues that have surfaced about the cleanliness, non-sanitary conditions, and apparent unsafe conditions that GDOE and public health allowed to be open, allowed Simon Sanchez High School students to go to starting their first day, which was this past Monday. And we know about these conditions because photos and videos started to pop up. And so Vince Borja, he did a walkthrough with, and it wasn't just a walkthrough, it was also bringing together GDOE and Cortec. So Cortec owns this property. And back in 2013 or 2014, the government of Guam leased this property, I believe for 20 years, if I'm not mistaken, from Cortec to be used as a school, as schools or whatever for GDOE. Um, Recently, at least a portion of the facilities was used for JP Torres Success Academy. Judy Wampat closed that down so that she could move Simon Sanchez High School into this place. Apparently, the repairs needed to be done to to this new campus, this new temporary campus, weren't done prior to the school year opening, despite claims from Judy Wampat's administration that the schools were ready to open. So much so that public health DEH inspectors did a surprise inspection yesterday following the outrage that the community had, of course, about the photos and the videos that they were seeing, but also a tip that they got in their tip line about a flooding restroom. Now, it's unclear whether it's that same restroom that is shown in a video or if it's another restroom. But amid this, all this chaos, right? GDOE and Cortec started to put out information that, and they started to say that each other's information was not correct, and it had to do with Cortec's dedication of manpower in order to fix some of these issues. No one's still no one's been able to explain why these issues were not resolved prior to the school opening, or why GDOE thought it was a good idea to open the school prior to these conditions being worked on or worked through. But Vince Borja, he was like, look, okay, there's a time for finger pointing, but what we need right now is to make sure that this school is safe for the kids and to ensure that next week this place passes inspection. So public health is supposed to be doing a whole inspection of this facility on the 21st because the current permit expires on August 31. The current permit was issued to GDOE for the operation of JP Torres Success Academy, not for Simon Sanchez High School. I asked Public Health Director Therese Ariola yesterday why they allowed the permit to roll over like that, and she said because it's allowable. And so because the permit doesn't expire until the 31st. Okay, so and then I asked her whether it was true that there was a surprise inspection. She confirmed it. She at the time, it was in the afternoon. She knew that the inspectors were there in the morning, that had taken a break, and that they were due to return in the afternoon to continue their inspection. We're not sure right now whether the facility has passed inspection. We have not received word yet. I'll try to find out this morning. But Vince Borja, so he's like, hey, let's bring these guys together because we need a path forward. And so here's the thing, right? Senators, this is not their job. And this is not to say anything negative about Vince Borja. This is actually to say something positive about him and Chris Barnett, right? Because they've involved themselves in these issues, and rightfully so, because the public wants some answers and they're trying to get some answers for us. But the fact that someone in the legislative branch has to go over to hold the hands of people in the executive branch says something about the deterioration of executive leadership. The fact that it is a senator who is the chair of the Education Committee not having any executive responsibilities with GDOE is the one who is brokering the deals to make sure that George Washington High School's special education department is not affected by a ridiculous move by Judy Wampat to lease the facility to SIFA. The fact that Vince Borja has to be the one to go over to Simon Sanchez High School and hold parties' hands so that they can figure out a path forward to do things for the betterment of Simon Sanchez High School speaks to a dysfunction within the executive branch, right? But at the root of this, because this is going to keep happening. Someone's going to keep having to hold someone's hand. Someone's going to keep having to solve these issues that come up so long as Simon Sanchez High School does not have a new campus. This is a school without a home, and it's been a school without a home for years already. I think since Malwar, since 2023. And so the majority of the students at Simon Sanchez High School have never seen Simon Sanchez High School. These guys have been waiting. The Sharks community, the current students and their alumni have been waiting since 2013 for the government of Guam to fulfill its promise to build them a new school. There have been several attempts to do so because of one thing or another, and it just all comes down to money and greed and corruption. It hasn't been done. And very recently, there was the effort to build Simon Sanchez High School. There was an RFP issued in March of last year. It was answered, and there was the determination of the first ranked offerer made in May, I think, of 2025. There were contract negotiations that were entered into that were quite scandalous, and we heard it from the tapes that we listened to in the summer of 2025. And then eventually, you know, our investigation into things showed that by November of 2025, the government of Guam attempted to siphon away more than $500 million over a 30-year period to give to Cortec to build just one school. It's just such an amazing and ridiculous amount of money. And of course, the process being challenged, right? Here's the process. In November of 2025, the second ranked offerer, who was ranked only 3 points below Cortec, but reportedly wants to construct Simon Sanchez High School for much less than what Cortec has offered. These guys filed a protest, their first protest in November of 2025, and then filed two more protests in December of 2025. The law says that Department of Public Works must respond to these protests timely. The law does not define timely. The legislature has since not defined the term, even though this has been going on for almost a year now. DPW has not responded to those protests. The delay is that the Department of Public Works under this administration refuses to answer the protests, which prevents the process from moving forward. So much so that the second ranked offerer, GFS or GPS, I can't remember the name, went so far as to appeal a protest that had not yet been answered to the OPA, and the OPA came back and said, sorry, you know, even if we wanted to get involved, we can't because the protest hasn't been answered. There's nothing to appeal yet because the protest hasn't been answered. Your protest has not been declined yet by DPW. And so everything rests on DPW. This whole delay is with DPW and the administration. It's as much as the administration wants to blame the legislature or Cortec or GPS or whoever, or the OPA, the fact is that the process has been stuck with DPW since November of 2025. And who suffers from this? The kids. Like, why is the administration holding this thing back is what I want to know, because they see these problems happening. And can I just be real for a second? Like, a lot of times I get tired of pursing my lips and holding back what my real opinions are. My real opinion is I think it's because they don't care. And we've seen this attitude for the past 8 years in public education, where something goes wrong in DOE, the media asks, or somebody, a parent or a teacher asks the administration, the governor, why aren't you doing anything about this? And the governor says, I'm not in charge of DOE. Put DOE under me and I'll fix it. That's her solution. It's not collegiality. It's not helping out. I think they don't care. I think that's the bottom line here. And I don't know what it will take to get DPW to answer the protests, but maybe it's the legislature passing a law that defines the term timely, which would force DPW's hand. On the other side of the commercial break, I want to talk about that now infamous photo of showing the Tenorios and some other people from Guam that apparently got Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio upset at, of all people, a Catholic priest. Let's talk about this on the other side of the commercial break. Stick with us. Does anyone have an answer for me yet? At the beginning of the show, I opened with I opened with, is Timu a trustworthy thing that I can order from? So I've ordered from Timu before. Like one time I did it. And I just didn't want to do it again because my order came after like five different wheel turning things. And I just, if anybody knows me, I just, even if they're great deals, I don't have the patience for stuff like that, right? I just, when I go to a store, I get straight to the point. Like I go to exactly where I need to go, and I get that, right? I'm not. So anyway, I was, and also I'm not big on putting my financial data on online anywhere. Like I hardly order from Amazon. I will never again order from eBay. But Timu, like, I'm wondering because I see all these cat condos. This, and I asked about this at the beginning of the show, and I'm serious about this. I'm wondering. I'm asking for everybody's comments on this. If you've ordered from Timu before, are you a satisfied Timu customer? And should I order one of these cat condos online? I'm getting a "don't do it" Chelu from Johnny Rosario. You know what? I trust her. I trust, so I'm not gonna do it. Maybe I'll just build one myself, right? Like I can just do that. I can be a handy person. I'm not I'm not that gay. Like, good morning. It is 9:16 a.m. on Thursday, August 13, 2026. My name is Troy Torres. Let's just get into it. Uh, where do you even start with this? Okay, here's where we'll start. The Monday after the primary election, it was August 3. We look through Pacer all the time. Pacer is the name of the federal court system's online archive. Oh, it's so useful. Anyway, in our daily look at Pacer, we noticed that there were orders unsealed in the Tenorio corruption case, and they allowed for Teresa Tenorio, Frankie Rosalind, and Matthew Tapasnia to travel to the Philippines. These are all separate orders. Travel to the Philippines on for some of them different dates, but they just it all sort of matched up, right? They were all leaving around the same time, and they're all coming back around the same time, and it's all to Manila, and it's for medical procedures or medical purposes, right? And so this is a thing that the federal court has allowed in different cases, right? They allowed it, yes, they allowed this in the Marasigan case, and we all know how that turned out. But these are a different set of circumstances, right? Maybe. Um, and so that was its own thing, right? There's that story. And then we were told by sources that Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio would be traveling to the Philippines. And so, the responsible thing to ask the governor's office is the lieutenant governor going off island? Is it a publicly funded trip, or is it for personal reasons? If it's for personal reasons, is it being publicly funded? If not, there's no story. That's the end of that. The only story would be that the acting lieutenant governor is Frank Blas, right? That would be the only news angle to that. But if it is publicly funded, there's absolutely a news angle to that. It's, well, where is he going? What's he going for? How much is being spent? Is security going with him? How much is being spent on security for both their salaries, their overtime, or whatever, plus their per diem and their plane tickets? All of these things are matters of public interest. Here's the thing that was interesting about it, right? The governor's office, and we asked for like a week, and we followed up and everything. John Ryan in the governor's office WhatsApp chat, he's the governor's director of communications. He reads all of this stuff. It shows double blue check marks that it's read, right? And doesn't respond to any of it. We thought that, okay, that's bizarre. Maybe they're tired from the election. I don't know, whatever. But he doesn't say anything. The governor's office doesn't answer any of the questions. I got reporters messaging me on the side, like, wow, this is highly unprofessional. Maybe these guys are 2 feet out the door, whatever, right? And then this past Sunday rolls around, and I receive a photo. It had gone viral. I received a photo of that shows outside, and I confirmed it with a person in the photo. It was outside a church called Santuario de San Antonio. It's apparently like the church where all the upscale people go in Manila. I don't know. I've never been there. And in the photo, there's nothing wrong with the photo. Like no one's doing anything wrong. It doesn't show. It just shows happy people, right? Is Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio. So that was our confirmation that the Lieutenant Governor was in the Philippines. Was this photo and a person in the photo who said that yes, that is him. Yes, that was today. Yes, that's at Santuario de San Antonio in Manila. So it's the Lieutenant Governor, his sister Charissa Tenorio, his boyfriend Matthew Tapasnia, Archbishop Ryan Jimenez, and at least 3 other Guam people, right? And I forward it to uh, JungleWatch because of the presence of the Archbishop in the photo. And JungleWatch, so I don't know who else JungleWatch got it from. Maybe I was their source. I'm not sure. But it's possible it was viral. It was a viral photo. It's possible they got it from someone else as well or other people. They have very good sources themselves. And so JungleWatch, they posted and they have there's a scrutiny that goes along with the post, and it has to do with the relationship between the archbishop and the lieutenant governor. And the scrutiny was on the side of the archbishop, right? If you know what you got to read JungleWatch. They've got like great stuff there, but they scrutinize a whole lot of church stuff. They also scrutinize things in the civil political world, but mostly it's the church stuff, right? And so there's an interesting article there, and so the scrutiny there was on Ryan Jimenez and not necessarily Josh Tenorio. So, all right. One of the people who also received the photo was apparently a bunch of priests got it, right? Was a priest named Matthew Blockley. Father Matthew Blockley is a priest incarnated in the CNMI in Saipan specifically. He was the pastor of San Jose Church in Oliai. If you go to that church and you see the renovations that were made, that was Father Matthew who undertook those renovations. He lives in the Philippines, and as he works out at a gym that's at the Ascot Makati. It's, if you've ever been to the Philippines, it's this upscale type hotel that is next to the Glorieta shopping center. And so as he's walking out, he encounters Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio and his boyfriend Matthew Tapasnia in the lobby, and because he knows them and because he wants to show his respect, he was saying hello, and he said that as he was making his approach and as the lieutenant governor was approaching him, he noticed that the lieutenant governor looked upset, and then the lieutenant governor started to raise his voice at him and to accuse him of being the person to give that photo to JungleWatch, and also it seemed that he was blaming Father Matthew for his loss in the election. And so it's a bizarre thing, right? Because it's like, what's wrong with the photo? Why is he blaming a priest who has really nothing to do with Guam, right? Like, he doesn't vote in Guam. He's not a resident of Guam. He's rarely in Guam. He has friends in Guam, right? Like, so it was all bizarre, right? But at the start of it all, and just sort of never mind that it's the lieutenant governor for a second, right? It's who confronts a priest? Like, and I had to think about that, and I was like, the Nazis confronted priests. The Soviets confronted priests. Communists confront priests. Like, I can't even think of an incident where a victim of clergy sex abuse confronted in a personal way one of the priests who were accused of clergy sex abuse. And just to be clear, Father Matthew Blockley is not one of those priests, right? He's never been accused of that. He's just, he's a really nice guy, actually. And if you know him, you'll understand. He's like all priests. Like, they don't want to be interviewed for anything. They don't want attention drawn to themselves But he just, because it happened in front of so many people, and some of them might have been from Guam or the CNMI, because this is like a touristy type of area, right? He wanted to make sure that his name was cleared, that he had nothing to do with the photo, and he certainly had nothing to do with the politics of an election in Guam. But also, the priest is terrified. He felt that the lieutenant governor, and here's these two guys who are much bigger than him, right? Who were hovering over him. He felt that the lieutenant governor was menacing and threatening, so much so that he's not going to leave his home until he knows that the Tenorios are no longer in Manila. And so, as I thought about it, right, I was like, okay, um, who confronts a priest? I remember doing a story regarding a sexual assault issue at Mount Carmel School, right? And I knocked on the door of the bishop's home, and I tried to get him on the record to talk about that, and he wouldn't. And when I look back at that, I think like, man, that was disrespectful. I should not have done that. That's something that I felt bad about, right? But this was a personal confrontation, and I keep going back to it, right? Like, who confronts a priest? And the fact that it's the sitting lieutenant governor of Guam makes it all the more eerie. And so here's what the only thing I can think of, right, is that I have to imagine that losing an election is a very traumatic experience. Especially if you're the sitting lieutenant governor of Guam. You've been ousted in a primary election. It's not even the general election. You've been unseated in a primary election. It's got to be something that hurts a lot and that causes a lot of trauma. And so, as I'm trying to put myself in his shoes, right, and trying to make sense of it, maybe the lieutenant governor is traumatized, and it makes me, concerned. It makes me feel bad for him, right? Because let me explain why. It's because I know what it's like to be traumatized by something and to not be able to handle it well and to lash out. It's how Kandit was created. It was because I was on a revenge streak after a traumatizing set of circumstances that, ironically, was born from a Lieutenant Governor Tenorio, Ray Tenorio, 8 years ago. And it was a traumatizing experience, and I lashed out in a very big way, and it was irrational, right? And I was irrational. I was not nice. I felt that it was everybody else's fault. I mean, I did take responsibility for my own actions. When I was asked certain questions, I admitted to my drug use and all that stuff, right? And, whatever. But I think I recognize the trauma and the lashing out. The unfortunate thing is that the alleged victim in this case is a priest. And a priest doesn't want to leave his home because he feels that his safety is in danger by the lieutenant governor of Guam and perhaps his family. And that's just the saddest part of it all. And I hope that 8 years ago, when I was the one lashing out, that I never made anyone feel like they were in danger of, little old me or anything. I mean, I can't imagine that anyone felt like they were physically in danger. I'm just not, a towering presence or anything like that. And I certainly didn't have the power and the influence of being the lieutenant governor of Guam. And so I can only imagine the fret that Father Matthew is experiencing, the anxiety, the stress, and I feel bad for them both, really, because I know what it's like to be traumatized and to lash out. And I hope that our lieutenant governor is okay, and yeah. Anyway, a sad situation all around. We did, of course, ask for. I messaged him personally when I couldn't get through to John Ryan again. Like he didn't answer our questions. I messaged Lieutenant Governor Tenorio himself. He didn't answer, and I was able to get through and get a response from Governor's Chief of Staff John Jr. Calvo, who said at the time that it was new, that what happened was news to him and that he would look into it. We'll try to see if there's anything that he was able to look into and report back to us. But I mean, it is what it is, right? Anyway, the era is almost done, folks. The era is almost done, and in just a few months, the people of Guam will have a new administration, and hopefully, we all would have learned from a very dark era. Uh, Hopefully, there are people who we put into positions of power and authority, who do things to bring justice to what has happened during this dark era and to prevent these sorts of things from happening again, because it really is something to allegedly hurt people with impunity, utilizing your position. And when it happens to a priest, my goodness. When we come back from the other side of the commercial break, I want to talk to you about the ridiculousness of the Ralph Torres spin doctoring of the $1.2 billion in debt that he left the people of the CNMI when he left office. Stay tuned. We'll get to that on the other side of this commercial break.
You asked, we delivered. Guam Auto Spot is extending our overstock sell-off with the hottest deals on island, like our 2025 GMC Canyon with $4,000 off, or slide into a brand new Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, starting at just $24,995. September is your chance to drive big and save even bigger. Visit us today or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com or call 478-AUTO. Guam Auto Spot, where the savings never stop.
This stuff's hitting the spot. Welcome back to the show. It is now 9:33 a.m. on Thursday, August 13, 2026. My name is Troy Torres, and in this third segment, we're going to chat about former Governor Ralph Torres, who is running for governor in this year's election in the CNMI. We broke the story of the financial audits, or the audited financials of the CNMI government, its main component units, or its primary government units for fiscal year 2023. And you might be asking, how is it that it's fiscal year 2026 and the audit for 2023 is only being released now? Very good question. Ever since Governor Arnold Palacios came to office in FY23 and found out that Ralph Torres did not order the audits for fiscal year 19, 20, 21, pardon me, fiscal year 20, 21, 22, and 23, coincidentally, the 4 fiscal years that the CNMI government received COVID-19 funding through the CARES Act and through ARPA, and also the funding for U2 relief came in during those years. Those were coincidentally the years that Ralph Torres failed to institute the single audit, or the audited financials of the CNMI government. So Arnold Palacios comes in and he says to Tracy Narita, his newly installed Secretary of Finance, we need to do the audits. And so over the course of 3 years, the CNMI government has been able to produce those 4 audits. The latest one came out is fiscal year 23. Hopefully, the auditors, Ernst & Young, will be able to get us fiscal year 24 very soon. And then there will be a catch-up. And sometime in fiscal year 2027, if whoever the new governor is allows it, there will be the audited financials of fiscal year 2026. And then they'll be able to catch up, right? Or to be on target. So after we broke this story, and the lead of the story was because there's a lot. There was a lot in this audit. There were disclaimers, yes, and that's important. And the worst marks you can get in audit, that's important. And you have to look at the coverage that's being done in the other places. The only other news place that gave this coverage any integrity was NMI News Service. Everybody else, I mean, I just have to question, like, how did you read that audit and report the way that you did? Like, this is not an actual report of what's going on in this audit, because the key takeaway by leaps and bounds is that Ralph Torres left the CNMI government $1.25 billion in debt. To give you some perspective, there was only 47,700 people living in the CNMI. If you divide the debt by the number of people, it means that every man, woman, and child in the CNMI owes someone $25,500. Now, in accounting terms, there are these variances in terminology, right? There's something called a long-term debt, and that's normally through an instrument like a note. They call it a bond in the government, bonded debt. And then there are other types of liabilities. There are your non-current liabilities and your current liabilities. All of it is money that is owed to somebody, which makes it debt. In our lives, right? When we owe something to someone, we have a debt to that person. So let's say that you owe $10 to your friend. You owe $100 to the bank on a personal loan, and you owe $1,000 to the bank on your balance for your mortgage, which was a 30-year note. Your debt is not just $1,000, it's $1,110. Ralph Torres, ever since we put out this story, has been trying to say, oh, this is not a $1.2 billion debt. Those are liabilities. Well, I mean, even if that was the line, right? Even if it's like, you're proud that you left the CNMI government, the people of the CNMI, with $1.25 billion owed to other people? And so one of the lines that's being spread is, oh, how old is this debt? And I thought, that's a very good question. Let's look at the audited financials going all the way back to the last full fiscal year of Governor Eloy Enos, who, when he died, handed the government over to Ralph Torres. So I went to fiscal year 2014, and I went to the audited financials from that year all the way up to fiscal year 2022, the last full year of the Torres administration. And my friends, when you see this story that comes out from Kandit at some point this week, I don't know what the spin is going to be from the Torres administration, but here is what the debt was, right? In all of these years. In 2014, the debt was $471.7 million. By the end of fiscal year 2015, $431.9 million. End of fiscal year 2016, $395.8 million. End of fiscal year 2017, $372.7 million. End of fiscal year 2018, $318.5 million. So, in Ralph Torres's first term in office, he did a very good job of bringing down the debt. Very good job. Except that since fiscal year 2014, Ralph Torres, according to the Government Accounting Standards Board policy number 44 and 71, was supposed to include in the financial audits the amount owed to the pension fund. This was a GASB rule change that was made back in, I think it was 2012, that would apply starting in fiscal year 2014. So those numbers aren't even accurate, and the audits say that. In fiscal year 2019, and this was the last fiscal year that Ralph Torres allowed an audit to be done of the CNMI's primary units. The debt ballooned from $318.5 million to $804.6 million. It is a combination of the inclusion of the pension fund debt and an increase in non-current liabilities, a substantial increase in non-current liabilities. The debt went down slightly in fiscal year 2020 to $787.9 million. No number to gaff at, or to, I'm sorry, no number to lay down on, right? And then fiscal year 2021. And this is caused by unearned revenues from funds that come in from the federal government, funds that had to be marked as unearned revenues according to this audit, because the Torres administration could not show the proper spending of these funds. The debt ballooned from fiscal 2020 to fiscal 2021 from $787.9 million to $1.3 billion. It went down slightly in fiscal year 2022 to $1.25 billion. And then by the end of Arnold Palacios's first term in office, this having to do strictly with the proper usage of those federal funds, the proper accounting of a portion of the federal funds that had to be unmangled by Tracy Narita and her team over at Department of Finance, plus substantial reductions in expenditures throughout the component units of the government, managed to get the debt down from $1.25 billion to $1 billion by the end of fiscal year 2023. That, my friends, is what the numbers say. And I'm very curious what the spin doctors in the Torres machine are going to have to say about this news story when Kandit comes out with it. But look, as I think it's Vince Aldon who in his op-ed said, numbers don't lie. The Torres administration does. For Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres. You all have a beautiful day. God bless you.